So very rarely on my YouTube channel do I not get pummeled by people who are absolutely convinced in a very narrow perspective that anybody who is fighting hard against the police must be guilty and we're simply complaining about the result. Well, that's what I call being intellectually lazy because what I'm fighting for is not only people like me who were innocent, people who did something minor and got hammered, people who are like Caitlin Grimley and others who did an actual something and got away with it, and many, many other issues and problems in law enforcement and the public's view of so called sex offenses, where we punish severely people who did nothing. And we really go after and people who did something until somehow it gets hot, and then we start backing off. So if you did something to an actual child, very often what happens is you end up getting a lesser sentence than if you were online and you were talking to an adult that the police put forward, and then they spun it around and said, oh, by the way, I'm underage. And whether you send pictures or not, whether you have sexually explicit talk or not, they still come and get you. And that's something that people simply do not believe, but it's absolutely true. I was on the phone with somebody last night. He's on probation. I can't mention his name. He described to me what happened to him, very similar to what happened to me. 2 weeks before or more, I told the story of a couple other people, same sort of thing. No sex talk, but they did engage with police, and they had the expectation that they were talking to an adult. Police will put an ad saying, I'm an adult, 35-year-old who has a younger friend, and they don't say how young the friend is. Sometimes they will, when you engage them, tell you in the 20s, and then they'll say, well, no, it's actually younger. And they capitalize on that confusion. And then, of course, the police and the judges say, you should have just immediately dropped it. It's your responsibility somehow. The police have no responsibility to get a warrant on an issue of probable cause. They have no responsibility to conduct reactive stings. In other words, we get a tip, we go on, we find you. They are allowed to troll, baiting you off and on. And if this happens to more people, and it's happening more and more every day, you're going to hear more people screaming about it. So for those of you out there who are saying, oh, it's very simple, don't talk to young people, you're not paying attention. Interestingly enough, we do have some press coverage, which I've mentioned about it before. The Washington Post came out in June with their Abused by the Badge series. I'm using my phone so I can use my computer here. And it starts out, I want to read you a little bit of this, because if you want to, you vigilantes and trolls, you really want to go after people who are hurting children, you don't pick people like me who have a history of helping children, but who the police love to trot out there as a real vagrant because they destroyed my veteran teacher status of long standing, where I was well regarded, and they get to say, aha, we brought that guy down. Listen to some of these stories, and you can go after these folks. And you vigilantes that are partnering with police, you may want to look at this too. You know, it's called The Truth, and this is where some of the real problem lies. The people, as always, some vigilantes, some people work with kids, and yes, people who have unchecked authority and who are often not supervised, behaving badly. Starts out, June 12th, 2024, article in the Washington Post by Jessica Contrera, Jen Abelson, John Harden, Hayden Godfrey, and Nate Jones. He was a police officer. She was 15 years old. He met her, and it's actually blocked out. It's funny, it's suddenly blocked out. I don't have a subscription, maybe that's why. He met her in the line of duty, is what it says. Then he sexually abused her. Abused by the badge. Washington Post investigation found hundreds of law enforcement officers in the United States have sexually exploited kids. Many avoid prison time. Because remember, they are special people. As you know, you have to have a man like George Floyd, who shot to death repeatedly over our news feed, cable feed, over and over again. We see this man shot before finally 2 or 3 states have the intestinal fortitude to put weakened qualified immunity laws in place instead of giving cops everything they want and more. So we have 2, Colorado and Connecticut. There might be more, but it's not very many. We had many more who had laws that they advanced only to have them killed later on, apparently when it was politically safe to do so. They served in police departments, the article goes on to say, big and small. They were new recruits and seasoned veterans. They were patrol officers and chiefs of police. They understood the power of their guns and badges. In many cases, they used that very power to find and silence their victims. Police and sheriff's departments have enabled predators by botching background checks. These are cop predators, by the way, ignoring red flags and mishandling investigations. The theory seems to be a good cop is hard to find and a bad cop is better than no cop at all. Accused cop, and this is my editorializing. Now back to the article. Accused cops have used their knowledge of the legal system to stall cases, get charges lowered, or to evade convictions. Prosecutors have given generous plea deals to officers who admitted to raping and groping minors. Judges have allowed many convicted officers to avoid prison time. All the while, children in every state and the District of Columbia have continued to be targeted, groomed, and violated by officers sworn to keep them safe. So, they highlight a lot of these. As I said, the end game here, the conclusion is in over a 17-year period, over 1,800 officers, just in this one analysis of 17 years from 2005 to 2022, that is 1,800 abuses of children, which averages out to be 8.8 children abused every month. Well, you trolls are on the wrong path. You should be going after them, asking them why they're not protecting children. Of course, many of you have trouble with that too because you claim you protect children, but you won't even put any skin in the game and identify yourself. John in Virginia, we have Bill in Pennsylvania, right? We have somebody who makes fun of one of us who is in prison for something he didn't do, and that's his email, the person's name in jail. So, I mean, this is what I'm talking about, you know. Excuse me, what we need is an honest dialogue, and we're not getting it. So I can go down here. Brian Hansen, a Nevada, Missouri police officer, brought a 16-year-old girl who was interested in becoming a cop on ride-alongs. He brought her on ride-alongs. According to state investigators, he sexually abused her in his patrol car and at the police shooting range, no doubt after hours when it was deserted and he could say he was on patrol. When Hansen pleaded guilty to statutory sodomy, he was sentenced to probation. Neil Kimball, an LA sheriff's deputy, was accused of sexually abusing a woman after stopping near her hotel. Prosecutors conclude there was insufficient evidence to file charges. Kimball was still allowed to become a special victims bureau detective. Then he sexually abused a 15-year-old girl whose case he'd been assigned to investigate. We have other cops in our cases, at least 2 I know of, where once they put the man in jail, the cop came back and made time with his wife. Seduced his wife, in one case, dated the wife, married the wife, while this guy sat in prison for a crime he didn't commit. These are the shocking cases that ought to be told in addition to the Fourth Amendment violations. Let's go down a little bit further here. Who are the 1,800 officers? Well, officers charged with child sex crimes worked at all levels of law enforcement and forces as big as roughly 33,600 officers. I don't want to conflate this. There were 1,800 officers, and they did on average 8.8 abuses per month. Okay, and I'm looking at some of them. 99% of arrested officers were male. 66% had more than 5 years of service. 47 were top cops in their agency. Nearly 40% were not sentenced to prison. 40%. Compare that to less than 2% in the general public. So don't tell me that there's a fair and equitable distribution here. Don't tell me that there isn't a weaponization against the average and ordinary citizen to take them down, and special deals for judges, prosecutors, and cops, because it surely isn't true. How were they targeted? Well, law enforcement did whatever they could, what every predator would do. You go to places where the children are. Hilarious how I've been accused of probably doing it more over a 20-year period, because after all, I was with children all the time. But of course, I was with them doing my job, teaching them. And just because there's no evidence of it, doesn't mean there's no crime. Well, we have this standard saying if there's no evidence, there's no crime. But interestingly enough, there's no benefit to people like me. And again, I'm speaking for all of us, some of whom cannot step forward because they're on probation. They cannot as yet defend themselves, but they're coming. There's a lot of them. So I'm looking here at a chart that they have in this article. Teenage girls were most frequently targeted by officers. The age range most commonly abused for girls is between the ages of 14 and 16. Boys as well, targeted mostly between 14 and 16. Now, what's interesting about this is I took 3 psychosexual evaluations. You know what they found? I've reported on this before, and others like me have reported on this before. 3 separate evaluations, no predilection to desire sex with children at all. And because they couldn't find anything, they said, he must have done something to thwart the test. Right. They're going to find something anyway, folks. So if you're listening to this and you're up on charges, believe me, you can cooperate all the livelong day and they're still going to hammer you. They're going to use every word, utterance, burp, gurgle, or fart that you emanate from your form against you. Trust me, they will do it. And your probation officer as well. Because the prison industrial complex thrives on getting more and more arrests. I have a letter sitting right behind this phone from a geriatric person in the prison system with whom I was also jailed. I'm asking him, are you getting your meds? Are you getting what you need? He was telling me that the parole system in Virginia, that is not probation, parole now, I'm speaking correctly on that, parole, which is almost non-existent, is actually the few cases they do get, they're granting it not to the elderly, not to the first-time offenders, they're granting it to the youngest people. And the theory among those in jail is they know that these people will likely more likely reoffend. They'll get them back in there. They'll get them in there faster. They'll get them in there longer, because this man's in his 80s. He will likely pass away before his sentence is up. So even though they're fighting for the Department of Corrections to recalculate the earned sentence credit, which they were ordered by the court to do, because they were playing games with that, which would shorten slightly sentences of people, they're denying the oldest people a way out until they at least do 10 years of a sentence. Again, a sentence for a bait and switch that a cop pulled on them, when you have actual cops doing this right here. And what are these cops, what price are they paying here? Oh, before we get to that, let's just talk about the charges. Rape in 39 cases, 39% of the cases. Child sexual abuse material, holding that 20%. Forcible fondling, 19%. Online solicitation, 7%. It appears the real danger when people are really paying attention are people who are actually in front of children, not online. There's a study I just read yesterday that said online solicitation is much lower than people think, and people who talk trash online, to put it bluntly, generally do not go and meet anyone. And yet they are the ones in record form who are being rounded up and imprisoned as threats to society. And 14% are other offenses, okay? Here we have a complaint about a school police officer were ignored when he was badgering a 17-year-old and then he got her pregnant. Nice, huh? Officer assaulted a girl on camera in a police station. His punishment? 2 weeks in jail. How many officers avoid prison? Quite a lot. Quite a lot. Nearly 40% get them. Criminal cases can take years to work their way through. The Post used data from Bowling Green's police crime database and Bowling Green University. They have a Henry Wallace Center there. And they said, let's see, 1,500 officers who are charged with crimes involving child sexual abuse before the pandemic caused backlogs and delays in court. 1,500 over a 15-year period. Okay? These are the people that we teach our children that they can be safe around, that our children can trust. Okay? So what happened to those officers? Well, 83% were charged before a judge, and they took a jury or a plea deal. 17% of those officers were not convicted. Not convicted. Well, prosecutors will tell you sex offenses cases, they're like 98, 99%. How do police officers get off? How is that? That's very interesting. 24% receive probation, fines, or community service. I don't see firing here at all. 61% were sentenced to time in, time in jail. It's hard to say because the paywall just clicked up and I can't read it, right? Unfortunately, it's not allowing me to read the rest of the article, but I think you get the idea. I'm looking at some other words, some other stats here. These same officers, many of them in the Bowling Green study of 17,700 officers, found many more guilty, and in the database for being found guilty and not acquitted for physical assault, drug offenses, and drunk driving as well. 1 in 10 were charged with a crime against a child. 1 in 10. Okay? According to this particular end of the study. Okay? According to the Assistant U.S. Attorney General Kristen Clark, who heads the Division of the Justice Department that prosecutes officers for civil rights, this is heinous conduct we cannot tolerate, and yet where are they putting their effort? They're putting their effort against destroying teachers like me who should be in the classroom, going after people who are intellectually disabled, people who are LGBTQ, people who are dealing with mental health challenges, people who are gamers online. And no, I'm not saying they're deliberately targeting these groups, but these are the groups online who involve themselves in fantasy and role play, and the police are going after them with reckless abandon to gin up their stats. So I have a question. Police, if this is a problem, number one, police your own ranks. Number two, go after the people who meet with children on the deep and dark web, who have videos and other things that they supposedly share, according to what you've told us. Go after people that you've gotten a reactive sting. In other words, hey, this person's been contacting my child, and this is their contact information. But what do? They spend most of their time baiting and switching, pretending to be adults who are interested in romantic liaisons, and then switching it up to children. And if you don't immediately break it off, if you say, what? Huh? What are you talking about? They arrest you. They go after you. We have cases where they've gone after somebody for 4 years. So as I close this out, I just want to share with you then the people who are really guilty of these things, and the people who would give them a pass at the expense of the rest of us. You're not interested in child safety. You're not interested in public safety. You're interested in shaming. You're interested in jumping on the bandwagon and joining the loudest, easiest voice out there, claiming that there's a sex offender behind every bush and they're coming for your children, because that actually isn't borne out by the statistics. A new meta study that came out 2024 here earlier in the year concluded that in a meta-analysis of 360,000 cases that they followed, the recidivism is actually reducing. It's not going up. over 20, and they extrapolated this over a 20-year period. It's not going up, it's going down by between 40 and 70%. Between 40 and 70%. And I'll have more to say about that in another video. This is getting a little long. So this is ICAC Unpacked for the 25th of August, 2024. Please hit me back. Let me know your views on things. Let me know if I can help you in any way. And please subscribe. Pass this along to other people.